I love when we chit chat and talk about this all day long, and then we walk out of the room and say, oh, that was nice, and go get to coffee and, don't do anything out of it. So at the end of the day, we have these luminaries ahead of us right here. And I'd like to know your top 2 things. What would you do as we're walking out from your vantage point, from your organization's perspective? What are you going to be doing in the next 2 months, 3 months? Let's even make it a little shorter, 3 months, to advance cures specifically. And so, Matt, I'm going to start with you, and then we're going to go down the row. And I've also been looking at questions just to make sure that we're not missing any questions. So there's been audience questions. You get your QR code. You all don't get out of jail free. You need to actually ask the question live because you're right here in front of us. But all of our audiences are working through this iPad here. Okay. So Matt, go ahead. Talk about our call to action.
Yeah, someone earlier mentioned something about expectations management, and I guess as a therapeutics company, being asked what we're going to do in the next 2 or 3 months to cure disease is a daunting question. Mostly we're going to spend a lot of money on the hopes that a little while from now, when we flip our data cards, they produce curative outcomes. Yeah, look, I spend a lot of time thinking about it, and maybe this is a topical point that the biotech capital markets are not strong right now to understate a difficult moment in time. And I think one of the things that I'm going to spend a lot of time on in the next couple of months is figuring out how to stretch our dollars, is figuring out how to make the money that we've got currently to spend on research sort of go as far as possible, and to figure out how to work on more things. And frankly, even from an investment perspective, how to look across the world at all of the things that people are trying to do, and to be opportunistic, to not only sort of look at what's in our own portfolio right now, but to see what other people might be working on that is, not going to get financed in the current capital markets without our help, but maybe could get financed in the capital markets with our help, and just to try and sort of keep track of that. So that's a lot about what's on my mind in the near term.
All right, you're going to stretch dollars. What are you going to do?
So I'm not in the business of stretching dollars at the moment. I'm with Welsh, Carson, Anderson, and Stowe. We invest in 2 industries, healthcare and technology. And I'm not a typical PE investor. I am laser focused on what do we need to invest in to build out, to strengthen the infrastructure of care delivery. So one area is, and PE, full disclosure, doesn't have the best reputation. Lots of unfortunate incidents, if you will, especially on the services side. But if you know this industry, you know where the gaps are in terms of what we need. Staffing, for example. It's hard to talk about cures if you don't have nurses at the bedside to really interact with patients. It's hard to talk about cure if you don't have anyone to help coordinate care as care moves from hospital to home. And we don't have ready answers. Those are the hard questions, quite frankly, in health. So we're spending a lot of time looking at that, and I'm not interested. Luckily, my firm is not interested in putting money where you can sort of get your money out and make a bunch if you're not solving meaningfully an important part of the care delivery system. I work through board service and a number of other elements of my work on health equity. And so how do we integrate this conversation around cures and scientific development, payment policy, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid, there's vulnerability that you can define in a number of different ways when you're talking about older adults and people who are poor, and other aspects of the healthcare system at the community level, certainly at the individual level, where we can actually make this conversation make sense for everybody. So it's great to have a cure if all the white men who are 60 are cured. That's great. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that can't be, right? That's not what the country is. We can't stop there. So we really do have to broaden the conversation. And I don't know that we're all equally equipped. So this is why who's at the table, who's in a room makes a big difference and can help sort of increasingly galvanize some of those conversations. So those are things that are top of mind for me.
I love that. Thank you. Carl, what about you?
I think my answer would be to take a little bit more risk. Following up on what Matt said, unfortunately, not everyone here may know this, but the biotechnology companies' sort of capital market situation is really bad now. And that does affect all of us. I mean, the biotechnology stocks are all down, maybe, if you're not an investor in them, you can say you don't care, but you should care, because that means less money is going to go into those companies. As Matt said, they're going to have to spend less. There are less drugs that are going to come out. There's a lot of reasons for what's happened, but I think one is that everyone got a little too scared, and a lot of the companies started doing the same thing. And how many PD-1 antibodies are there? There's a lot. There's probably too many. So, in fact, in every drug class, whatever it is, you can see there's so many like Me Too types of products, even from innovative companies. So you asked what I'm going to do. I think we need to take a little bit more risk. Hopefully the things will still work, but invest in companies that are pushing the envelope more, first in class, doing novel things. Because when you have so many companies that are competing with each other doing the same thing, then people don't care that much. There's actually not as much value generated.
Great. Thank you.
So at the Prostate Cancer Foundation, the most important thing we do is cultivate talent and create community. And one of the ways we do that is we fund young investigators who have a whole world of options ahead of them. These are the brightest people who graduated at the top of their class and did residencies and fellowships or postdocs and PhDs. And they can go work in a lot of different avenues and a lot of different conditions. But if we can hook them on working on our condition, prostate cancer, and we can find them when they're 30 years old, and we can get them the bridge to start a career towards independence, and they work for 40 years until they retire, that's a lot of work we get out of that person. So our young investigators, we give out about 25 of these per year. And I like to say if we give out 25 of these per year and each person we give them to works 40 years in our field, we're funding 1,000 years of research every year. And if you want to talk about curing a condition, you have to have the Army there to do it. And that's why that's, I think, probably our most important project. But creating community is also that, creating an area where people are encouraged to not compete in a dogged way against the person down the hall or at the other institution, but to collaborate. And so team science is the other way that we do that. And I'm very proud of the legacy of the Prostate Cancer Foundation. This is not something I invented, it's something I just walked into, and I'm very proud to continue that.
That's great. And Aaron, for you?
So I'll come back to your optimistic note. I fully believe I'll take off my pump in my lifetime. And as CEO of Jdraft, our mission statement is accelerating life-changing breakthroughs to cure, prevent, and better treat T1D and its complications. So I'm all about how do you accelerate life-changing breakthroughs. To me, that's funding more research. We have our venture fund now, get more companies focused on T1D. I think regulatory is a huge opportunity. You want risk. FDA has historically been risk averse. The patient community is more risk tolerant. We need synergy there. And then coming to access, we need to create a thriving market where things are affordable and accessible to everybody with T1D, United States and globally. So in each of those buckets, I'm trying to push. I'm trying to leverage, work with Helmsley, work with NIH, work with the industry. I always say that we need to, every type 1 person, I want to say, how can you help us accelerate a life-changing breakthrough?
That's great.
And find that spot and move things through the pipeline.
So these call to actions, my team that's out there live streaming